Hey guys, welcome back to my channel. It is time for another true crime video yet again, and today we will be talking about the Kobe child murders, one of the most infamous cases from Japan. Alright, so we will be referring to today's perpetrator as Sakakibara Seito. This was only a pseudonym that he used during his killings. However, this is how he is most known as. So anyway, Sakakibara Seito was born on July 7th, 1982 in Kobe, Japan. He lived with his parents, two brothers, his grandmother, and their family dog. Growing up, Sakakibara had very low self-esteem and thought of himself as someone disgusting and with twisted thoughts. His grandmother was well aware of this and therefore favored him compared to his two other brothers. The grandmother loved Sakakibara so much. She loved him with all of her heart, and these feelings were reciprocated. He loved his grandmother just as much, and she was basically his world. And that's why when she passed away, when he was still a little boy, this completely broke him to pieces. After this, he just started to get worse. His family was well aware of his twisted thoughts, but now he started to act on those. He felt very lonely and isolated and was always in his own world. And on top of all of that, he developed a morbid fascination towards pain, death, and murder. He started catching slugs and snails and would dissect them and would watch in awe as blood oozed from them. He soon moved to killing frogs, which he enjoyed more because, unlike slugs and snails, they tried to fight back, and he got more of a reaction from frogs than slugs and snails, obviously. Now, not long after his grandmother's death, their family dog suddenly passed away as well. And this is when Sakakibara started to have a fascination towards death and how he cannot control it, which made him very upset. After this, he moved on from frogs to cats. He caught a stray cat eating his dog's leftover food. And again, he took this cat, killed it, and dissected it. He confessed to getting some sort of sexual gratification after this, saying that he took pleasure in seeing animals in pain. And as he grew older, he just became more and more antisocial. He would spend his days killing and dissecting animals, and not only did his family know about this, but their entire neighborhood knew as well. Now, when he reached his preteen years, he started to fantasize about what it would feel like to kill someone, a human being, and sadly, on February 10th, 1997, when he was 14 years old, he decided to finally act on those thoughts. It was late in the afternoon when he spotted two elementary school girls walking. He chased these two girls and started to attack them with a hammer that he had in his bag. Sakakibara Seito never left the house without a weapon, and he had been doing this for years. Starting from a young age, he would always bring either a hammer or a pocket knife or scissors with him. Basically anything that could cause pain or injury. Now, these two girls were badly injured, but both survived, thankfully. One of the girls told her father that the person who attacked them was a boy slightly older than they were. He used a hammer and was wearing a school uniform blazer and carried a bag typically used by middle schoolers. A little over a month later, on March 16th, 1997, Sakakibara Seito was walking along the park, hammer in hand, when he spots a young girl named Ayaka Yamashita alone. He then approached Ayaka and asked if she knew where he could wash his hands. Now, this kind girl led him to a nearby school, and this is when he struck her in the head multiple times. He fled the scene, and although someone did see Ayaka and brought her to the hospital for treatment, She passed away due to her injuries just a few hours later. Ayaka Yamashita was only 10 years old. A few weeks later, another attack was carried out, and this time it was another young girl whom he cut across the stomach with a small knife. Now, luckily, this girl survived her injuries, even though it took weeks. On May 27th, a gruesome scene was discovered. The head of a boy who was reported missing the day prior was found in front of the gate of an elementary school. Just the head. This boy was then identified to be 11-year-old Jun Hase, a friend of Sakakibara Seito's little brother. Jun Hase reportedly left home 2 days prior to the gruesome discovery. He was on his way to his grandfather's house when he stumbled upon Sakakibara, who then lured him into a wooded area by telling him that he saw a very cool-looking turtle. Now, once they reached an isolated area, Sakakibara strangled Jun with his bare hands before decapitating him with a handsaw. He then hid the body of the boy on top of a hill before taking his head home to perform disgusting things that would satisfy him. And as soon as Sakakibara found out that people were now aware that Jun had gone missing and never reached his grandpa's house, he decided to put Jun's head in front of the elementary school and shoved a letter or a note into his mouth for the police to read. He was this depraved. This note was written in red ink and said, "This is the beginning of the game. Police officers, stop me if you can. I desperately want to see people die. It is a thrill for me to commit murder. A bloody argument is needed for my years of great bitterness." It was then signed in English, Shul Killer, and of course this was an error and he meant to say School Killer. On June 6th, a little over a week after Jun's murder, the local newspaper received a note regarding the gruesome details of what happened. The author of this letter blamed the education system for how he turned out, and this is also the very first time that he referred to himself as Sakakibara Seito. Now, by the end of June, Sakakibara Seito was arrested for the murder of Jun Hase. He was linked to the crime as well as the murder of Ayaka Yamashita because dead and dissected cats were found on both scenes. And as I have mentioned earlier, people in their community were very aware of Sakakibara's fascination towards death and his violence towards animals, mostly cats. He was referred to the media as Boy A, as in a lot of these Japanese cases, the identities of minors are often protected. It is rumored that his real name was Shinichiro Azuma, however, this was never confirmed to be true. Now, as soon as he was arrested, Sakakibara confessed to everything that he had done. He was incarcerated and celebrated his 15th birthday detained. Now, a lot of people refused to believe that a shy teenage boy was capable of doing such heinous things. But when his mother visited him in juvie, she asked him if he really did do these things. He said yes. He confirmed that everything he said, everything he confessed to was true. Now, sadly, his mother got blamed by the public for ignoring the advice of social workers who had told her of their concerns of Sakakibara being mentally unstable. Apparently, a lot of people were already taking note of how odd he was, and the mother never listened. On October 1997, Sakakibara Seito was then transferred or sent to a special reform program to receive psychological help and counseling. 4 years later, he was moved to a different facility, but only less than a year after this transfer, he was sent back to the original reform program. In March 2003, a 3-member panel deliberated, then decided to accept Sakakibara's request for parole. And believing that he had been successfully rehabilitated and he was no longer a threat to society, 21-year-old Sakakibara was then released. He stayed in probation for 1 year, and after this, he was no longer required to report to his parole officer. And once his probation period was done, once it was finished, he moved and disappeared and allegedly cut off all contact even with his family. After he was released, even though he was already of legal age, his real name remained withheld to the public as he was a minor when he committed his crimes. So nobody knows what his real name is, and nobody knows for sure what he looks like. And no one knew where he was and what he was doing until 2015, when he had the audacity to release a book, an autobiography or a memoir that detailed all of his deranged thoughts and presented the gruesome details of all the crimes he had committed. Because of this crime, in the year 2000, the age of criminal responsibility in Japan was actually lowered from 16 to 14 years old because, as I have mentioned, Sakakibara was only 14 when he killed those 3 children. And that is pretty much all that I have for today's video. As usual, I would love to hear your thoughts on this. I think that this was very unfair. Even though he was a minor and he was mentally unstable, the severity of his crimes should have gotten him a way longer sentence. And I think also, I can't believe that he was actually allowed to publish a book and make a profit off of the heinous things that he had committed. I also heard that before his book got banned, it became a bestseller in Japan, which is crazy. So again, please let me know your thoughts by leaving a comment below, and should there be any other case that you would like for me to cover, please let me know. Thank you so much for tuning in, and I will see you guys on my next video.